Awesome. So, uh, this is a working document. The title of the document is Reclaiming Power from Bureaucratic Parasites to Digital Autonomy. First of all, I would like to thank the proofreaders and the people who have helped me along the way. Uh, Shreyan is here, right? He is one of them. Thank you so much, Shreyan. Alok is here. Has helped a lot, in proofreading, and Sachin. Sachin is, I guess, not here with us today, but yeah. So the article is divided into a lot of sections, right? We'll first look at overview of bureaucracy and its evolution. Do remember the definition of bureaucracy because it will help later on, like somewhere down the line. The article is pretty long. You can see it's like around 6,150 words, so might take 2 sessions. Um, and we'll go through the evolution and the history of bureaucracy. Then we'll look at its origin and early forms. We will, go through what are the power structures and how it relate with bureaucracy. So how it all started, how it how it transitions to something else, and what we have today, which is emergent, default or traditional, transitional, and emergent. You have bureaucracy and social decay, which I feel a lot of Bitcoiners are, uh, you know, aware about. But I would also give like a perspective from Friedrich Nietzsche, which I really liked, and my own take on it. There are two theories that are also like to put forth: social parasite theory and foxes and lions theory. Foxes and lions theory has been uh, is taken out from Machiavelli, and I have used it here for implementing in our case. Then comes the digital rebellion and the cypherpunk movement. The overview of cypherpunk technologies. Here, Basanta Goswami helped me a bit, so thanks to him. Uh, then we have Bitcoin and the future of money, right? Which is a very small overview because we are Bitcoiners. There are many amazing articles written on this, so I have not fleshed it out a lot. Uh, then there's the internet as a decision-making machine engine. It's something new. And finally, there's a future without bureaucracy. And then a very small conclusion, which still needs to be put out, right? And I feel people here in the chat will help me with that. So let's start. There are two definitions to bureaucracy, okay? First of all, we know it's a system of administration which has emerged as human societies became more complex and needed efficient way to manage resources, regulate activities, and maintain order. Its development can be tracked back to the rise of early civilization and the growth of centralized state. As the society faced increasing demands for coordination, organization. So very simple, very straightforward. As it became more complex, human to human connection became weaker. You needed bureaucracy to maintain order. Here's the definition of what bureaucracy has become, though, right? From its original purpose. Today, it's a silent conqueror of civilization. It does not seize power through revolution, war, or economic domination. It's not elected. Instead, it infiltrates, expands, and slowly consumes the very ruling class it's once served. We'll look at it how. No wonder, no matter who rules, priests, warriors, merchants, or secret police, bureaucracy latches onto a system like a parasite, feeding off its power while offering the illusion of order and efficiency. It's a hidden cost that the masses have to pay under the guise of the illusion by their freedoms, sweat, and blood. I feel this is something that most of us can relate. We live in India, our freedoms are being curtailed constantly. It's being happening every day, no matter who is in power, right? So there must be something that is going on which is very wrong. So here I want to argue that both are true or were. Because as of 2025, writing this article, we have definitely come closer to latter than the former. Latter as in the latter definition. So at the start of the bureaucracy, at the start of this entire thing, various ruling classes presided over the societies. They came into power due to various external and internal factors, including but not limited to geography, culture, resource availability, complexity of the civilization, and competition. Now, this is nicely detailed in a later section by Niccolo Machiavelli, which is the foxes and lions section. Okay. These ruling classes supplanted the characteristics on society in different way. So India had a priest class or an intellectual class that supplanted itself at the top of the hierarchy. Okay. This priest class of Brahmins basically supplanted some of their characteristics on the rest of the society. Right? That's an example for India. For warrior nobility, for warriors, you have Sparta, you have a lot of military junta, you have Franco Spain. This is the primary reason for the demarcations of different human civilization in the pre-modern age. So these ruling classes include the default ruling class, which is the priest, the warrior, nobility, and the merchant. This is how most of the civilization started out with. Think Mesopotamia, think the Indus Valley, think the Belbical culture of Europe, think anything, think Egypt, anything, right? Then you had the transnational ruling classes, the nomad elites, someone like Mongols, someone like Rajputs, right? Someone like Ahoms, right? They came from outside, they came internally, they ruled that place from some time, but something or the other happened and their authority was supplanted or they were ideologically captured. You have the peasantry, the peasants, the plebs, the masses think they will overthrow the government, they will do a revolution, they will take over the entire ruling class. That has never happened. That is why it's a transition. It's a transition towards something different. So the emergent ruling classes, which has happened in some places, the secret police and the hybrid, or it goes back to the default after transition happens, i.e. there is order, there is chaos, there is order, there is chaos, right? Typical secular cycles. So let's first see how power structures shape ruling classes. Like the article is about bureaucracy. Harsh, why are you talking about ruling classes? So we'll go through it first. uh, we'll go through it quickly. Like anyone has any questions till yet? uh, Anything?
Yeah, I think there's something about uh, like you mentioned about the ruling classes, and in ruling classes also there's elites and there's counter elite, and often in the history
Yeah,
like a revolution has not really upended. Like some revolutions have upended, but mostly it has worked for like it has basically shifted power
exactly.
to counter elite who become
Correct. The
the
counter
new
elites
ruling
take over.
class.
Yes.
Yeah, and
Hmm.
and over time like a new counter elite develops. So this happened in Japan, wherein it happened in a lot of Indian states also, right? You would have kings and you would have the military commander or like the defense minister, right? And
Yeah.
as you would see with slave dynasty, which came in India in 12th century, the rulers were replaced with by the commanders. Similarly, in case of
Correct.
what was this like Maratha kingdom, the rulers got replaced with
Hmm.
commanders, and again commanders became rulers, and they got replaced with their commanders.
Correct.
Same as what happened in Japan, wherein uh,
Hmm.
the, the the samurai class was basically a class of people who were warriors, and they replaced the kings. And over time, they
Yeah.
became the kings, and a new set of warriors replaced the existing kings. So
Correct.
that's also a repeating pattern, wherein counter elites keep
Hmm.
replacing elites.
100%. That's basically what it is. So Japan is an example of warrior nobility back then. Then you had the Edo period, where you had the intellectuals and the bureaucracy had more of a role. A much like well-known example is China. China went from a very Confucianist society, right, which was driven by kings and noblemen, to like entirely run by Qing dynasty, which had the ideology of legalism. Legalist ideology and Qing dynasty introduced the first SATs in the world, and they basically elected bureaucracy by these standardized tests, right? And these bureaucracies supplanted their characteristics on society. So yeah, it's again same way, right? uh okay, let's move on. Anyone else, like any question, any thoughts? Okay.
There's this one thought I think I find interesting how the demarcation is between default, transitional, and emergent. So there's clearly some story to it, right? It's not like
Yeah.
it happens overnight that one person says, "Hey, I'm going to be the ruler from now." There is a story and
Hmm.
transition period to it.
Yeah. Yeah. I would argue it's like a thing of the especially the material and the cultural conditions. Like you would never have a surveillance state if you did not have technology to surveil, you know? So
Yeah,
something like that. You would never have an expansive secret police if you did not have the right incentive structures, something like that.
true, true.
So yeah,
Yep,
yeah.
yep.
Okay, moving on. So, how power structures shape ruling classes? Power and ruling classes are intertwined, each shaping and reinforcing the other. As power structures shift, so too do the elites who hold power. From the priestly intellectuals of the past to the secret police of the modern era, each ruling class aligns with a particular type of power, whether it be ideological, economic, military, or informational. Now, the default ruling classes. Let's go over to each of them. As Saurabh mentioned, I have given examples for each of them, so you can like sort of research on your own. But it's only one two liners. So yeah, first we'll do this, then we will connect to how bureaucracy interacts with them. It's very interesting. Uh, and I'll give my sources as well. Crazy sources, right? A lot of actually non-conventional writers, but cool. Okay. At the heart of civilization lies ideology, the stories we tell ourselves about power, legitimacy, and the right to rule. Priests and intellectuals have historically controlled the narrative, shaping the moral and the philosophical foundations of their society. In medieval Europe, the church was not just a religious institution, it was a pillar of governance. It controlled education, dictated laws, and justified the rule of king through divine right. Even in secular societies, intellectual elites, university professors, philosophers, and media figures hold tremendous sway by shaping public discourse. All of these NGOs and a lot of think tanks, right? Uh, it's very interesting if you go into their business model. This is what they basically do. The intellectual class dominates through ideological power. They define what is acceptable, what is taboo, and what is unthinkable. This will be more articulated in the next or the next to next article, which is the Overton window article. Okay. In modern times, they manifest as think tanks, universities, and the media, exerting power over what people believe and, by extension, how they behave. This directly goes in the face of what we call democracy and what we say, okay, Harsh, Shreyan, Saurabh, all of us are allowed to think what we want to think. No, we are not. There is clearly an Overton window in what we are allowed to think and how much we are allowed to think. Some, as far as to some words, are banned in public discourse, right? Example are Sumerian city states. The ruling governor or king came from the line of priests, right, and also held the rank of the head priest, also known as the NC at Lagash, and also Brahmins in ancient India. A very interesting fact about Sumerian city states: they existed in Bronze Age civilization where there was not much competition, right? You had the IVC, which was also thriving a lot, right? But then came the Bronze Age collapse, and basically this entire priest class just vanished, right? Because again, this will be discussed later. Just a sneak peek. The external factors, right? Geography, chaos, really affects who can rule what, right? There was no chaos, right? People were dumb, people were not educated, people believed in the divine a lot more. There was a lot of disease, there was a lot of suffering, so people needed God, right? And you also had less wars comparatively because there was not as much competition during the Bronze Age, right? So priesthood came up and up and up, right? So this essentially leads to theocratic authoritarianism if taken to the extreme. A good example of this is how Aztecs, I would suppose, used to behave, right? Theocratic authoritarianism. So the next is warrior nobility, the enforcer of violence. Where ideology constructs the framework of power, violence enforces it. The warrior nobility, as Saurabh talked about Japan, whether feudal, knights, samurai, or general, have historically wielded political power through military dominance. These are the lions of Machiavelli's dichotomy, rulers who maintain order through force. During times of instability, the warrior class often seizes direct control. However, in stable societies, they tend to be subservient to the ideological elite. Modern military leaders rarely take power outright as they are ideologically conditioned to see themselves as defender of the state rather than its ruler. This shift marks the transition from lion-led societies to fox-led ones. where controlled violence serves the interest of the bureaucratic and the ideological elite. So we'll talk about this later, right? In the foxes and lions, thing. What I'm trying to do basically is trying to connect the dots so you guys can, like make sense of the entire thing, and not everything is not super demarcated, super separate, right? A good example which I really love is Franco's Spain. So Franco's Spain is very, very interesting, right? You had the communists, you had the anarchists, you had the far leftists on one side, and you had the monarchy, the republicans, right, and the army, the military on another side, right, and the theocracy. Now the entire right coalition and the left coalition did not like face each other to face. They did not, right? The republicans, the monarchists, right? The Republicans, their whole point was they do not want a monarchy, right? The monarchy's whole point was that they do not want that they want a monarchy, but they still were on the right side, right wing, right? So Franco back then was in Africa, right? He saw what was going on in Spain. He saw Barcelona being, captured, uh, right? So he saw this and he was like, what the hell is happening up there? So he took his entire army, military, right? And he basically went there and made sure, forced the entire right coalition to come together. The only thing left did not have was a similar military or an army structure that could put them in line, right? So what happened? Franco won, right? Franco won and Franco ruled over Spain. However, this reign was short-lived, and it was a very dysfunctional government, because obviously there are too many coalitions there are too many parties in the coalition who do not meet each other face to face. They're ideologically against each other and only together because of Franco and his military. So once the peacetime came, once the war was over, right, you had to build the society, right? You had to build a society which the military could not do, right? So today, if you go to Spain, you talk about Franco. Franco is not as popular in Spain anymore, right? Spain went from a military junta or a dictatorship, right, to a democratic society very fast, right? And another example, you have modern day Myanmar. So one of the very interesting facts about modern day Myanmar is when they kicked out Rohingyas, right, it was not the work of the government. The military arm twisted the government into doing that, right? And the people in the periphery of Bangladesh supported the military back then. So military in Myanmar had a bit of a local support, right? That is how they were also able to oust them, right? Because again, the military supported a local, a domestic issue and took a side, right? And that bargain paid them off. Uh, so yeah, this essentially leads to a military junta or a right-wing coalition authoritarianism if taken to the extreme. Next, uh, anyone has questions? Should I move ahead? Like it's a big article, so like any questions, any thoughts so far?
Garvit, whenever the speakers sort of invite any questions, you can then jump in.
Okay, Garvit. Okay, are we allowed for discussions or question about? Yeah. We are. Um, agree the inefficiency of code. Okay, it's different. Okay. So it was so hello Godel. It was I guess when there was the Spanish Civil War. The capital of Spain, I don't know if it was Barcelona, but the capital of Spain was captured and was taken by the leftist. And I guess in a week or like some days, the Franco came in and just sweep them up. Right? It's a very interesting piece of history. You can go into it. Anyway, we have references at the end, but the end is not going to be today. So yeah. A person could think, but there were restrictions on if you could express that thinking outwardly. The ability to influence what people think, that's what ideology wants to inculcate in you. Yeah. Exactly. True. But I mean, my counter to it would be like today, especially in the West and even in India, I don't know in India, but in the West, there are a lot of words being banned. It's like 1984, right? So you tell me, if you do not have a word to mean a certain thing, how can you communicate it? You essentially remove that word from the entire discourse, right?
And also, my point is there will always be value system judgments. So you will always have things which you are not consider, which are not considered to be the right things to do. For example, look at an army taking over a country. Like it's a legit thing, but it will never be in a discourse. Like it will never make it to the discourse in India because it's so frowned upon an idea. It has happened in other countries. It has happened in I think it happened for a brief period of time in Bangladesh. It has happened for a really long time of period in Pakistan. It has happened in Myanmar. So it's a real possibility, but it is frowned upon. So not only just Overton windows, but a lot of, because we have value judgments, we some ideas are frowned upon and some ideas are put upon pedestal.
Mm,
I think
mm. And
uh,
very, yeah, yeah,
eh,
go on, Saurabh. I'm so sorry.
no, no, it's me,
Oh,
Shreyan.
Shreyan, I'm so
I was just making
yeah.
one point that I think this comes in later in the article that India, I think, more than frowned upon. I think, of course, that's true that the value judgment is there to like restrict any form of coup, military coup. But I think it's more of being a stable society. So India is like a very young society, right? It's like 65-year-old independent society. And I think in that time horizon, we have not had a major currency crisis. We have had poverty, but we have not had like major upheavals in revolutions. I mean, the emergency was
Yeah.
probably the biggest event in history of India after independence.
Mm,
So, yeah, I think the article mentions it very nicely that when stable societies are there, the military loses influence because they are seen as guardians of the state instead of having like physical force as power.
mm.
And that's also a modern notion that militaries are supposed to be defenders. Militaries were not always defenders.
Right. But I think the cause of it is that stable societies have that equilibrium of militaries naturally evolving as a defender instead of like doctrine doing that. I think it's more of it's a society being at a stable equilibrium rather than indoctrination of militaries. Yeah, that's just my opinion or my
I
perspective.
feel it's more about incentive structure as well. In a lot of nations, uh, the military gets a lot of funding, right? Especially in a lot of like America and stuff. So they don't as such oppose the status quo. Do you have an incentive structure in India where the military opposes the status quo? I don't think so. Are we like consistently divesting in military? Are we putting our military down? No, we are not, right? So it's I feel it's more about incentive structures, and incentive structures are also a product of material and social conditions, right? Which Ryan is talking about. We simply did not have a big enough crisis. Like if you ask me, if tomorrow we put down, we say no more subsidies for farmers, and if we assume that majority of the army are sons of farmers, and if they say their, if they see their parents are in a very bad condition, the government of India taking away subsidies from farmers, right, or not giving them rations, I think that will change a lot of things for the military, right? They might not do it, they might lose their faith in the country, right? Think about it. It's about incentive structures at the end of the day, is what I feel.
Yeah, yeah, that perspective definitely makes sense.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks. So very the chat is very active. I love it. Um, yeah, Alok. Yeah, Alok bhai makes sense. Yeah, true. You can never restrict that, but it's like I don't know. I just have that fear. Like I don't know. You look at Canada. I mean, it definitely is happening in US, and I also feel it's a product of people just becoming dumber. I don't know where like people just do not want to talk about it. Like for example, what is happening in the West right now? The left is basically burning Tesla factories and Tesla cars, and we know batteries, right? Lithium batteries are very bad for the environment. 5 years ago, 5 6 years ago, the left was the biggest supporter of Elon Musk, right? You go and reason with them. There is no way to reason with them, right? It's like there is there is an ideological blocker which sort of prevent people from talking about it or even, making themselves to comprehend that issue. I don't know if this makes sense, but uh, yeah, that's my 2 cents on it. Like, like people definitely have ideological blockers. I feel it's not as bad in India. It's bad. It's much worse in US because US does not have communities like India does. It simply does not have the religion, communities, cultures, even caste. As much as we hate caste, caste also gives like a community feeling. US simply does not have that. So they make political ideology their religions, which I also talk about in the article. Uh, anyway, moving along. Okay. So the merchant class. I'm a Banya, so yeah, I can relate to this. The merchant class, the master of money. Money is a peculiar form of power. It can influence, but it is also dependent on external conditions. The merchant class, rising to prominence in the late medieval and early modern periods, thriving in societies where commerce is prioritized over military conquest or religious orthodoxy. They also gain prominence in peace times where chaos isn't a bit of a factor. In capitalist society, the merchant class becomes dominant by leveraging financial power, controlling resources, production, and access to economic prosperity. However, wealth alone does not always translate to ultimate control. Where capitalists influence policy through lobbying, media ownership, and philanthropy, they often remain secondary to those who control ideology. In the modern world, billionaires fund politicians and media networks, but their power is often contingent on public perception. If the ideological elites turn against them, they can be brought down through regulation, social media, social movements, or public scandals. This show the limits of financial power when pitted against ideological control. Example, the British East India Company, Italian states, Venice, and Guyana. So essentially, this leads to a cryptocracy, not to be confused with corporatism, which I feel a lot of people do, even when I have been in debates about it. Corporatism is something very different, right? If taken to the extreme. Against mainstream thought, I don't think this is the end of uh, Austrian economics, right? As in, people think that corporatocracy is the end of Austrian economics. This is mainstream thought across a lot of, center left, center right kind of people. Uh, so one of a very good example I feel is the state of Carthage. If you guys have known about the Punic Wars between Rome and Carthage, you had Hannibal, who was basically kicking ass of Romans in Italy. He went directly to Italy and basically kicking the ass of the Rome, right? So that was happening. But then came a time where he needed support backup from Carthage. Carthage was basically like a mercantile empire which did a lot of trading in the Mediterranean. It was a sort of a superpower of the region alongside Rome. Okay, so he needed backup to his men, right? But what the elites, the mercantile elites in Carthage did is they said, no, we cannot do it because it will harm our trading, right? Basically, they basically kicked themselves, they basically shot themselves in the foot because a few decades later they were capitulated by Rome, right? So they ended themselves basically, all for the sake of profit. And I think this has happened in India as well, where you had uh, uh, I would not say that like you some people might feel offended, but you had examples where some Banya communities in India co-opted with the British, right,
Yeah, Jagat basically
for their
funded
own
British.
profit. Yeah,
Yeah.
right. So that's sad, but it's reality, and
So
like
why is
it
it,
has
I'm
happened.
curious, why is it not the end of Austrian economics? Because all the imperialism was not exactly an act of state coercion. It was mostly merchants going around all over the world and trying to find
Hmm.
a cheaper uh, way to source resources from India and from other countries which had a lot of resources and sell it in the European market. And it didn't
Yeah.
turn out to be really well for a lot of people. So why is it not the end of Austrian economics? What do you feel?
Uh, so wait. What's the question again?
No, my question was basically around if you let free markets operate, uh, how
Yeah.
this is what it eventually led to, right? So how is that a good thing if you let a free market operate? You get some. Do you not repeatedly get something like imperialism all over again?
No, you don't, because Austrian economics, if you take it to the extreme, should have no state, right? You had Rothbard and you had guys like Triple H as in Hans Hermann Hoppe, which I really like. Uh, like these guys really put down that the whole point of this not becoming corporatocracy is that you will have free markets that will be able to regulate it. When state come into the picture, they have their own interest and they co-op with the merchants to basically get something out of their to get something out of their own, right? So things like expansion of East India Company into India went from exploitation to subjugating the entirety of India, right? Something like that. Because if you look at it, managing economies, managing an entire subcontinent is very different to trading. Like I'll give in a very good example. The entire conquest of Africa was extremely unprofitable for the empire. The golden goose was India. Because you had basically no infrastructure in Africa. So sure, you had a lot of stuff there, right? But you have no logistics, you have no transportation. So it was a net negative. There was loss, right? So in a free market, if you do not have any state, they would not do it. They would simply do not because there is no profit there, right? However, in also like if you talk about free market, then also comes the principle of NAP, non-aggression principle. Then also comes the principle of not coercion and natural law ethics, which are mandatory, right, to be followed. Or yeah, you are correct, right? That is what it will lead to. Uh, Basically, like if you did not have a state, they would never go to a lot of places which they did. The state co-opted, the state come in between for their own interests, right? The like if you read about the scramble of Africa, that is what it is, right? It was never about resources, it was never about trade. It was simply, okay, Britannia is capturing, France is trying to go into Africa, Italy is trying to go into Ethiopia, British trying to go into there. They are trying to capture the trade routes, the essential trade routes to India, China. What are we supposed to do? Okay, we have to run fast, we have to go fast, we have to spend the resources. It was about that. It was not about resources per se. So that is my take.
Yeah, another thing I had in my mind is so the last paragraph, the one before the corporatocracy. I'm not sure if I pronounced that right.
Yeah.
About billionaires funding politicians, but yet not having a lot of power because the ideological elite can like shape their behavior. I think Silicon Valley and the if between American politics has like been a good recent example, right? Uh,
So
I'm not,
true, so true.
but
Yeah.
like there's this theory, right, that even Trump coming into power had a lot of backing from Silicon Valley because they were fed up with the woke and leftist propaganda of Biden and Kamala Harris. So
Yeah.
yeah, there was clearly
Yeah.
a lot of billionaires were
The
not able
yeah,
to.
the Silicon Valley had to basically toe the line for Trump. They had to
Yeah,
stand in the line.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that tells you how the ideological elite, the earlier part in the article also mentions this, right? The ruling elites and the power structures shape each other. So the ruling elite,
Hmm.
money is also a form of power. So the ruling elite currently are the technologists, right? It's the Silicon Valley. They have the huge money
Yeah.
to invest into technology innovation and like build new
Yeah.
industries. But there's still the ideological elite, right? Because there's the right and the left in the US, which
Yeah.
are they're
They
still.
they have they have control on the flow of information,
Hmm,
which is crazy.
yeah,
Merchants has never gotten that power before
right.
in history. It's all because of social media and tech.
Yeah,
That is
and
why Nostr
Bitcoin.
is such a great
Yeah.
Nostr is, and that is why it's such an amazing thing, man.
Yeah, and even Bitcoin is the epitome of it, right? It's like information money. It's finally all power is concentrated in one piece of information.
Hmm.
So you're
Yeah.
saying the intellectuals or the priest class controls information flow, the military controls the flow of security or violence, and the merchant class basically controls the flow of money. Is what you're saying broadly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's like all three can sell you a vision, they can sell you an idea, and all three do it in very different ways. If you are in Africa, sneak peek, another. I've discussed this as I am discussing this as well. Very good, like point raised. I'm discussing this as well below, but like you can think of it as in Africa, in North Africa, a lot of very few people take up majority of the women, because how it works out in, I guess, Uganda, Nigeria, is the amount of sheep you have, you can give to the women's house, women's parents and stuff, the more women you can get, right? So a lot of young people do not get women, right? So the military sells them sex. They are like, we will get you those women, we have to just go and kill them. So that becomes like a incentive structure for these young guys to join jihadi movement, right, in Africa. That is how they recruit it. There's a documentary on this by BBC or Vice, if I'm not wrong. So yeah, it's again, everything boils down to incentive structures, right? It's like you can sell a vision, you can sell an idea, and you can have people bank on it. There you go, you have power. Simple.
Just one question,
Transitional ruling classes. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
which is on like how do these things shape up in the age of Bitcoin and Nostr? So you have free exchange of information through Nostr, which is
Yeah,
basically not stoppable by any class of rulers or intellectual class, which can say these are legit words to say, these are not legit words to use, or no such concept of open window,
mm-hmm.
mostly on the internet on
Correct.
Nostr. Then you have
Yeah,
like Bitcoin, which is the first form of asset which is unseizable with any kind of violence. So
correct.
basically, it there's a limit to violence. I mean, you can kill the person, but you will only make other Bitcoiners rich. So you should not do that unless you have a lot of Bitcoins. So there's a limit to I would say violence that it brings. How do you
Yeah,
see these things shape up? Like who sort of
yeah.
who gets to do
There
what?
is a section. There's a section of cypherpunk and cypherpunk reality, right? So Nostr exists, Bitcoin exists, correct, but it's not the status quo or the mainstream yet, right? So you are doing a thought experiment, and I'm trying to answer that thought experiment at the
Just
end of this,
one, just
right?
one point that I wanted to call out. So this is being
Yeah.
recorded and streamed. Do you want the recording and stream to continue, or are you okay?
No, no, I
Bro,
wanted to continue.
delete
I
the
would
whole recording.
keep up.
Keep
Why
just the
so?
recording.
It's all right,
Yeah.
right? We can cover the article. I don't get it.
Okay.
What's the
Perfect.
issue?
Godel has had something, so I was just wanted to check that.
Okay. Anyway, this is not going to get covered, right? Even if we like did not speak, if we had zero discussion, this still would not be covered. 100%. Anyway, uh, the transitional ruling classes. So this is a working article. This is my brainchild basically, and the entire like the default transitional and the emergent thing is a brainchild. So it's a working article. You guys can tell me I'm wrong here, whatever, because I might be, because it's headcanon, right? So yeah, uh, by brainchild mean I literally did not take it from a book, right? So yeah, nomadic elites. So you have the nomad elites. So very interesting. You guys may or may not like agree with this totally, which is fine, but I'll keep my points. So nomadic elites emerged during periods of upheaval. Barbarians at the gate, warlords in power vacuum, or reactionary leaders reshaping the system. They are the great disruptors of civilization, often using raw violence or opportunistic alliances to rise to power. Historically, figures like the Mongols, the Bedouins, or the Cossacks exemplify this ruling class. They capitalize on periods of collapse, stepping into vacuum left by failing institutions. Their rule, however, is often temporary, and eventually they either assimilate into the existing power structure or they are replaced by a more stable government. In modern times, nomadic elites can be seen in decentralized groups like terrorist organizations, insurgencies, or cyber criminal networks, even though they are mostly propped up, but okay. Entities that challenge the existing order but struggle to sustain long term rule. So, very good example of this. for us all, for me as well, I'm from Rajasthan, are Rajputs. So Rajputs are technically from India, but not exactly. They have a section of their ancestry, genetic ancestry, haplogroup wise, which comes from the white Huns, right? So they traditionally did not follow the culture or any of the Vedic, non-Vedic strands of Hinduism, but they came in, right? They ruled over the entire North plain, which was very, very difficult to rule with. So their ruling method would be basically like they're very hands off of the local economy. When Rajputs used to capture each other, they would not sack each other's cities. They would let them, do their thing. Why? The entire incentive structures was to get more money, more taxation from these cities. And if you keep warring, right, which is what Rajputs did, they keep used to war between each other, right? They used to go to war with each other a lot, a lot. So if you destroy the cities, where is the incentive structure in that, right? So basically that happened, and they came into the fold of Hinduism bit by bit, time with time, right? I don't know exactly about this, but if there is some Assamese in the chat, let me know. I feel the same thing happened for Ahoms. Ahom were not like technically from modern day India, right? They were not even from Myanmar, if I'm not wrong, right? So crazy there. So even they were not like traditionally Hindu, Vedic, non-Vedic. They came from outside. They came here. They captured the land, and then they were ideologically captured, right? They were taken into the fold of Hinduism. So cool stuff.
Bro, same happened with Mongols. So they went and
Yeah,
sacked
converted to
Islam,
Islam. Yes,
and then they became part of, yeah, they converted to Islam.
exactly. The Mongols came. They led to, like, Mongols are crazy, man. They came. They led to the rise of Russia as a central state. Else it was just a principality. You had the Turks because of Russia. You had the fall of the Byzantines, basically the Rome. You had the fall of Iran, Baghdad. You had the Mughals also because of Mongols, right? So many strands from one set of nomad elites, right? At the end, like, they just lost their entire identity basically, right? And had to take up the local culture. So next, you have the peasantry. Oh, my favorite. The accidental rulers. Rarely does the peasantry rule, but in moments of extreme crisis, they can rise to power. Be it Russia's serfs, 80% of the population of Russia was serf in Tsarist Russia, right, under the Romanov. That is when the Novemberist uh, bombing happened, right? You had peasant revolutions, you had communist revolutions, you had grassroots uprising, which are the examples where the lower class briefly seized control. However, control power gained through mass movements is often unstable. The peasantry lacks long-term institutional experience, making them susceptible to co-optation by ideological elites, military leaders, or bureaucratic administrators. The French Revolution, for instance, began as a peasant uprising, but quickly fell off under the control of the Jacobians and later Napoleon. In the Russian Civil War and subsequent takeover by the Bolsheviks, the vanguard, which my favorite word Shreyan would know, led by the far left institutional class, quickly sought to consolidate power away from the peasants after the revolution. With time, it transitioned into a complete psychotic police state after Stalin got the reins of the state. In modern politics, populist movements reflect the dynamic, where they claim to represent the common good. They are often guided by charismatic leaders who manipulate ideology for their own ends. So, I'll give you a brief overview over what I think, and then we can have another round of discussion, right? Why I love the Vanguard? So, I have made a direct connection with Vanguard and Bitcoiners, right? I remember in one of the discussions in a Wednesday club, I showed a chart of influence versus number of people, right? It was the chart of Bitcoiners. So you had the shitcoiners, you had the Web2 guys, you had Bitcoiners who were on the sideline, you were traditional finance people, and you had the maxis, and me and Shreyan were discussing that we have to create an intellectual class. Why so? So, a very interesting fact about Russia and Germany, right, is that there was one huge, huge difference between Germany and Russia in the communist uprisings. is that Germany did not have a strong enough vanguard, which Russia did. The Bolsheviks were a vanguard, were a very strong vanguard. Vanguard is basically like an intellectual class which understand that the common people cannot understand the teaching of Marx or uh, writings or whatever you may say, right? Very they can the workers and the normal peasants cannot understand complex articles and institutional and all of these things, right? Because they are poor, they are peasants, right? They do not have enough time, they do not have enough bandwidth, whatever it may be, right? So in all of these things, Vanguard was like, okay, we have to convert this language into something that they are able to digest to. This is where the propaganda came in, right? You call it education, it is propaganda, right? This is what Bitcoin needs, right? According to me, we need a vanguard of this level, this sort, right? So Bolsheviks basically did that, and very few parties did that. So the left was a spectrum in Russia. The Bolsheviks were a very small component of it, yet they won above all of them. Why? Because they had a vanguard who was able to mobilize the entire working class for them, right? They're able to do it, right? And I am 100% sure as we move ahead in 10, 20 years, or even after our death, right? After we die, if Bitcoin goes at a good place, there would be sections inside Bitcoin itself, right? Which would be fighting for like an intellectual or a ideological right over each other, right? And in that case, this structural organization and competency will help, right? So these are my thought. And number two, the populist movement reflect this dynamic wala part. Very interesting to me because I feel guys like Modi, guys like Trump win on this front, right? They say something else, they do something else, right? It's populism taken to the extreme. uh, so yeah, we'll discuss about this. It's very interesting, right? Mostly Indians here, so like we love seeing that. So yeah, rounds of discussion. Any questions, any thoughts, guys? I'll drink water.
Yeah, I think just one point I had in my mind that I think Bitcoiners, of course, will always have different opinions, ideologies, and their own ideas of how
Hmm.
uh, s- governance structure should be shaped. But I think Bitcoin is fundamentally different that these ideas can now coexist, which is not true with like the fiat system because there's only one person who will end up with a money printer in the fiat system because it's like US dollar is the world reserve currency by default because of historical antecedents, because of it being the biggest military power. So on Bitcoin standard, you can like agree to disagree more fairly because there are clear boundaries of control. How that boundaries will shape is like is it's nobody knows how that will happen for the
Yeah,
next 10 to
yeah.
50 years.
But there would be definitely like a tug of war between controlling the public perception, I feel. And yeah, people are free to choose, but there might be
Mhm.
some level of, I feel, you know, not everyone will be able to think independently. People
Yeah.
will follow, right?
Yeah, I mean,
There
populist
will,
movements,
you
in my
will have
opinion, has been,
leaders. Yeah.
yeah, populist movements are not going anywhere, at least for, I mean, a considerable good amount of time for the next 100,
Hmm.
200 years. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Any more like questions, discussions, guys? Bitcoin does not fix human themselves, only their external circumstances. Yeah, 100%. Cool. Okay. Okay, let's move on then. So the third section, the emergent ruling classes. So, ah, okay. Till this point, the entire thing might have sound pretty negative, as in we are talking about ruling classes and oh, harsh, it sounds so negative and stuff. But um, I guess I guess it is what it is. But silver lining, I really like this part. I really like this part, and there is a bit of good in it. The next this part. Okay, let's go. The emergent ruling classes, the secret police, and the master of information and fear. As societies become more bureaucratic and surveillance driven, power shifts from visible rulers to those who control information. The secret police, wherein totalitarian states or through modern surveillance agencies, exemplify this shift. I'm so sorry. Information power is distinct from ideological power. It is not about shaping beliefs but controlling behavior through covert coercion. The secret police doesn't need to convince you of an ideology, they only need you to fear the consequences of dissent. From the KGB to the Nazis, from SS, it would be SS, from intelligence agencies to corporate data surveillance, the new ruling class emerges not from the battlefield or the marketplace, but from the ability to monitor, predict, and manipulate public actions. The secret police state tries to end all manners of traditional institutions that form the base for the traditional ruling classes. I think this is something that would be found interesting to all of us. So, Soviet Union tried to destroy the family, the church, free trade, and natural rights. So did the Nazis, culture and heritage as well. So to remove any semblance of the past, basically the left, the Marxists had the concept of a new age, starting the history from zero, right? Basically removing any semblance of the past. The left will also say it's necessary to do so because all these institutions are inherently oppressive. The left thinks in a very certain manner, which is an oppressive, oppressed class. Everything, be it women, be it LGBTQ, be it India's Hindu versus Muslim debate, be it outsiders, black versus white debate, be it Europe's immigrant versus the native debate, everything. Oppressive issue, everything. The entire history is that, according to them. So, where the real motive for the secret police state, is to make sure that the society can never go back to its default natural setting. This is the most dangerous of all, and the seeds of cultural Marxism, critical theory, and social justice that all lead to the same place. They are the ones who 1984 warns us of. Here, there is no end goal. It's already here, and you wouldn't even know it. The dissenters will be vanquished, the protest will not even be visible, and the words will be removed, and rights will continue to be curtailed. Till there are none left. Till there is no humanity, only replaceable cogs for the all encompassing machine. Right? So, yeah, very bleak, but that is what we are going towards. Right? I feel everyone can feel it in the air. Everyone can feel it in the air. The hybrid, the synthesis of power, some positivity here. In a mature system, the most powerful ruling class is not a single entity but a fusion of multiple power structures. The hybrid elite or elites is a blend of competition between ideological, financial, and coercive forces, the intellectual, the military, and the economic spheres. This is when the government keeps their nose out of the economy, the military out of the administrative, and the religion keeps itself inside the house. I.e., this is where you have the potential to do the most progress, most art, and most beauty, and the most freedom because of the balance of powers. The balance of powers. And the inherent understanding among everyone in the state that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Rome. The Roman Republic featured a complex system where patricians, aristocratic elites, plebeians, commoners, and military leaders competed for powers. Institutions like the Senate, tribunes of the plebs, and elected magistrates ensured a balance between these groups. But yes, as we all know, as it went on and on, the Rome degenerated. They went astray. They started minting their own money. Uh, Hyperinflation. They had degeneracy. They had social and cultural decadence, and they just fell. They just fell. Medieval and early modern Britain. As much as we are Indians and we have like a grudge against Britain, but hear me out on this. They saw competition among the monarchy, the landed aristocracy, the church, and later a rising merchant class when there was supplantation of Spanish and Portuguese empires by the French and the British, right, in the Americas. The Magna Carta 1912 limited royal authority, empowering nobles and setting the stage for parliamentary governance. Pre-Marxist take over America. This is one of my most favorite examples. This is where I feel America, I sort of like. Not shilling for the West because we all know how the West is today. It's a case of something that we should be afraid of. But anyway, so the Brits came to America and they put down a system that They put down the same system from their island on a landmass that was 330 times their size, right? The Declaration of Rights and the founding document by the founding fathers was heavily influenced by John Locke's, which was like the OG libertarian writings. The US Constitution established a system of checks and balances where political elites, the judiciary, and economic interest competed for influence. Now you may say, okay, Harsh, it's all the same for all the democracies, right? No, it's not. No, it's not. Because there is a line here which we need to understand. India does not have this. Power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. People do not understand this. The middle class does, people like us, the Bitcoiners do, but most people don't, right? People revel in the power that they are given, even if it's a small amount of power. The local policeman or the local MLA, he revels in this power, right? There's no concept of like this. So no, not all democracies are equal. Industrialization in the 19th century saw the powerful businesses elites, robber barons, but progressive reforms curbed their dominance. So you had the bad trust by my favorite president, right, who was Teddy Roosevelt, like just crushed like the monopolies, which was basically like happening at just coercion to end, right? Uh, but progressive reforms curbed their dominance. Military leaders also periodically shaped policy during crisis. Example, George Washington or Dwight Eisenhower. So the ultimate rulers are those who can adapt, who can subvert ideology with force and deceit, and money with information, and pander to the emotions of the masses with manipulation. As Machiavelli suggested, the ideal ruler is both a fox and a lion. Also, you can compare this to the concept of philosopher king, right? Same, like similar concept, I would say. And in our modern world, the ones who truly hold power are those who can wear both of these masks. So uh, yeah, it's 9 o'clock. So yeah, discussions, questions, anything.
Yeah, I think just wanted to stress on how you were talking about it's in the air and it's looking pretty bleak in India. And I think, yeah, all of us are Bitcoiners, so we are optimistic about the future. But like you said, I think yeah, it's very well put. And I think just the cultural zeitgeist, right? That's the metaphor of feeling it in the air. I think it's not always about logic and reasoning or inflation numbers. It's about feeling it. It's about feeling it in our daily experiences. And yeah, most of the Bitcoiners that I talk to come from different states. They come from different backgrounds, different religious beliefs, but still everybody's feeling it. It's like it's a very universal feeling across for Bitcoiners at least. So yeah, we are living through interesting times. I think it's yeah, more and more people are definitely waking up. It's positive signs even for India, but yeah, most of them are not. It's like that's the concern. Most of people are not critical thinkers. They are not thinking from first principles. They are watching mainstream news or they are watching Instagram. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's sad.
that's okay. I feel like what we need to do is we need to like do coercion and like do propaganda. See, the incentive structures for normal people, normal everyday Indian aren't going to change. What can change is how we present ourselves and how we put forth our points, right?
Mm.
Now, yeah, granted, that will take a lot of thinking and that will take a lot of, intellectual capital. But what else are we here for,
True,
right?
true. Yeah.
Uh, so it's okay, man. And I think like no one here believes that you need the majority to take the
Yeah,
power or something. You can do it.
yeah. That's true. That's true.
Uh,
Aaron just joined us. we
Hi, Aaron.
we literally missed you for the entire session.
Hey guys, sorry. Just was busy with a few other things.
Yep.
So you can see the index. Can you see the index?
What do you mean index?
And
Oh wait, your
the
screen.
screen.
Yeah,
Nasdaq.
yeah, I see it.
Yeah. So basically, we were covering this, and okay, it's 9 o'clock. So, Shreyan, should I stop it right here?
Yeah, I think we can just go over the index and yeah, if you want to like fill in Aaron a bit on your article, I think that would be great. I love the article, by the way.
Yeah.
It's like, I will
Oh, it's
recommend
out.
everybody to.
Is it out? Is it published?
Yeah, yeah,
Awesome.
it's fuck all. Okay. So
No, no, he's
we
asking, is
started
it
with
published? He's asking, is it published?
no, it's like you tell me. Sit in the sessions and you tell me if it's ready. I don't know, man. Okay.
Uh,
So
yeah, I mean, I like
um
it. I mean, of course, it can. Yeah, I think the purpose of these sessions is to like refine it, is to help you with review and yeah, feedback.
yeah. So great discussion, by the way. I love the discussion. Like people left, but very cool discussion. I love the damn discussion. Okay, so the index. So basically, Aaron, we covered today the overview of bureaucracy and its evolution, the purpose and scope of the article, the origins and early forms, the rise of centralized administration. This part is the thoda, like new. Uh, Power structures and ruling classes. So there are three types of I've compiled ruling classes into three types: default ruling classes, transitional ruling classes, and emergent ruling classes. The priest, the warrior, the merchants. The transitional are like transition happens, like they come, they feel they will have power for long, but they don't, but they fucking don't. You had nomad and the peasants in that, and you have the emergent ruling classes, which come from a combination of social and material conditions, plus when there's a transition, okay, which is a secret police and the hybrid. Then you had bureaucracy and social decay, which we are going to cover now, right? We have only covered this much today, right, which is this much. Yeah, so we covered this much. You can read it. I have posted it on my GitHub. It's on draft 6th, if I'm not wrong.
Awesome. Can you send the
So
link here in the chat? Is it possible to do that?
yeah. I'll do that. So Shiran, we are pausing at lions and foxes. Thank you so much for